Gwen Bialik.
Here.
Barclay Butler. David Costa.
Here.
Stephanie Hausch.
Here.
Steve Sebastian. Michelle Shaw.
Here.
Josie Shattuck.
Here.
Quorum present.
Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to call the Cubs of Pack 156 to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello, everyone. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to say thank you for coming and doing a Pledge of Allegiance. We've not had many Boy Scouts come in for a long time, so we appreciate you coming in. Thank you. There's a prize for you. There is brownies, so you can have a brownie. Please take one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Public participation. Members of the audience are encouraged to make comments and ask questions of the board consistent with board policy 2.230. Please identify yourself and limit your presentation to 3 minutes.
So before we open up to the audience, this is Bodo, I believe, is going to introduce our student presentation tonight.
We have Miss Linda Williams here, our Prairie Grove Junior High art teacher. We have invited all of the students who have been recognized through 2 different art shows or award competitions here tonight. And we have one young student in attendance tonight, so we're very lucky to have Sienna here with us. But Linda's going to go over a little bit of our program in the junior high and then highlight those award recipients. Please welcome Linda Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Model. Thank you, board, for letting us talk to you guys tonight. We have a really exciting program with very brief information for you or presentation for you. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the curriculum. We have the McHenry County 4x6 show, which is what Sienna participated in, and the Illinois Art Education Association Student Art State Show. That's a lot of words there. I'm used to saying IAEA. It's a little bit easier. So just a little bit of background of what's offered for our students here at Prairie Grove in the junior high is that now we have the 5th grade that has joined into our program, which is really exciting. So we're able to offer them art once a week for an hour. So I see all of the classes for the entire year. So that actually kind of works out to the same as what our 7th and 8th graders would get. If you kind of break it down, it comes to about the 12-week program. So they have, that's for our 5th grade. Our 6th grade meets for 6 weeks and we get them every day. So that kind of goes pretty quickly, but at least they get a sampling of the different exploratories that we have to offer. And then in 7th and 8th grade, like I said, they meet for 12 weeks every day. So they meet for an entire trimester. In 7th grade, the offerings that we have this in the last couple of years, because our program has changed over. So we've created expression where the students are able to, when they come into my class for the day one, I give them a huge listing of the different options: painting, drawing, sculpture, printmaking, fiber arts, whatever it is. I'm like, here's all the projects. Okay, let's narrow it down to what you guys want to do. And the students vote on it, and we narrow it down till we get about 4 or 5 projects. And that group will do that. So right now, for instance, I have 8th graders that are in creative expression. So you can, in 7th grade, they do like 7th grade projects that they're taking from the 8th grade. Creative expression is 8th grade. So you don't have to take a first year in 7th grade creative expression. You could do like an architecture in 7th grade and then creative expression in 8th grade, and you're not going to be behind or anything like that. But I have 2 sections right now, and they're both in 8th grade, and they've picked separate projects because that's what the classes decided. Some of the projects overlap and some of them don't. In architectural drafting, that is a prereq to go into architecture too, if they want, as 8th graders. So in 7th grade, they can be in architecture drafting 1, and in 8th grade, they can be in 1, or if they took 1 already, they're going to go into 2. And then in technology, we call it TECE, or tech art, because it's combining the fine arts with technology. So we have Spiros, we have the IPVOs, we're doing stop motion animation, which that's some of the awards that we've received this past year with the brand new program, which was really exciting. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But so we have the technology enhanced creative expression 1 and then 2. So in 8th grade, they can take 1, or if they took it in 7th grade, again, they can move on to 2. So that's a little bit about our program that we have here for them in the visual arts. Regarding the McHenry County 4x6 show, there was 464 entries. It was juried by 3 local artists, and Prairie submitted a lot. We submitted 34 pieces. So from 5th grade through 8th grade, we had a lot of interest from our 5th graders, especially, that it was offered to them. So they were really excited about that. And then in middle school, they awarded 4 awards from all the McHenry County submissions in the middle school division, and Prairie Grove took 3. Wow. So amazing job. And then within each district, Ms. Modal and myself, so administrator and our teacher, got to select students also that submitted. So from our students that placed, we had Ani, she got 1st place out of all of the middle school students. And then Oliver, he got honorable mention. Leia got 2nd place. Alyssa got honorable mention, and Sienna got honorable mention. And she's going to show her award, and she's going to show her artwork. Stand up. I'll help you. So I'll hold your award. So she got this. Okay. And then the show was, they had this in Crystal Lake. It was over Springfield, when we went to Springfield. So was that October? Yeah, in October, they had the show on this Saturday. So we weren't able to attend. I don't think you attended, did you? Did you go? She's a little tired. She got up for band today. So we're really happy that she was able to join us. And this is Deanna's work. Wonderful. And then one more to show you. So from IAEA, we had a bunch of pieces so you're able to submit, I think it's like, I could submit 10 pieces in visual arts and 5 pieces in stop motion animation. So like I said, this is a brand new program for us. So we had literally 2 trimesters. So we had 2 classes the entire year of last year of stop motion animation from the tech art class. So we're like, okay, let's give this a shot. And it was brand new. I had never done stop motion animation. The tech department was amazing because we're like, okay, what do we have? What can we add to it that's not going to be too expensive? What's something that's manageable for the students? We're going to use the Chromebooks. So we're like, everybody's brainstorming and trying to figure this out. And as a big team, we all kind of came together with cloud stop motion. And Cassie May and Denise and Scott and everybody was awesome, trying to help us whenever we needed. They would come into the class and just get us through it to understand it and everything. So from there, we had 3 winners from stop motion animation. One, or the Noah and Emma are now are freshmen because this was submitted as 8th graders. So we submitted last spring and then they get selected like spring, summer, and then they got the award now in the fall. So Noah and Emma, we had Reese, who was a 7th grader at the time. Nikki was a 7th grader at the time. These students were invited to come to the state conference. Miss Model was there, I was there, and the kids were honored at the event during the day, the artist reception. And it was really pretty cool because they had like big screens like this and they were showing their stop motion videos on there, and the kids each got to go up and shake hands with the president of the association, and they got awards and they got great prizes. So it was a wonderful experience for them. They were really honored that day. And then we also have from the student art show, from the 10 pieces that were submitted from Prairie Grove, one of ours was selected, and it was Keith Lynn, and she was in 6th grade at the time. I have, this show is actually, the visual art show is a traveling show, so it goes to different districts. They host it, and it's gonna be in Woodstock, the Woodstock Library, kind of like in the springtime. So if you wanted to see all the pieces, but it's also, let me escape. You can also go to their website. This is the poster that we have. Keith Lynn's work is right here. Oh, you guys can't see it, can you? I can see it. Clicker. It's very tiny, it's right there. But I'm going to show you a better one. So you come down here, and then you can see the different grade levels. So since she was in 6th grade, we'll click on 6th grade. Here's Keith Lynn. And then you click on it, you can see it even larger.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So this is her Peruvian jug. This is a 6th grade project. And the entire thing is hollow. It holds water. There's a whole story behind it. I will not give you guys the entire lesson tonight, so don't worry. But you can pop in anytime you want. But this is very sophisticated. You can tell. Look at how she rolled the roses and she made the bees, and it came out of the kiln, and I was like, I'm so excited because I'm like, this is a piece I want to send. And but I'm like, oh, I know she needs to do something else. So her and I talked about it, and I suggested doing the rings around it. I'm like, okay, how can you make it look more like a beehive? And she's like, oh, I can put black lines. Yes, you're reading my mind, exactly. And then that was her idea of dripping the honey off the top too. So for not too, but she decided on that one. So that was really, really fabulous that she did that. Yeah. And then if you continue to come down, you're gonna see here is Noah and Emma, and here is their video. You can play that, and Nikki's, and then if you continue down, and we have Reese's here. And the students made all of the props. They did the whole set. They wrote the storyline. So start to finish is all their own development. So they did a fabulous job. I'm hoping to send more this year. We're really excited. We were great that it was so exciting for Prairie Grove to get honored so many times, because even like Miss Model and I are sitting there and they're like, and Prairie Grove School. And we go, and Prairie Grove School. It was like I sat down and I got back up and I was walking to get across the stage. So it was amazing. So thank you everybody for all of your support. If it wasn't for you guys supporting me, I wouldn't be able to do what the kids and I want to do together and just have a great time doing this and being so successful. So thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Looking at the list, there's no one signed in or people signed in, but no one wants to speak. So I will then move on to administrative reports. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. As I mentioned last month, one of the reports tonight, Mrs. Kesey has got a presentation. Why she will get her set up here momentarily. Maybe. There we go. You're on. Okay.
Okay. Technology. Well, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about our responsibilities as a district when talking about early childhood programming. I know there's sometimes some confusion about, do we have to have a preschool? Would that be something we could pull back on if we needed to when we talk about space and things like that? So we thought, with our increasing enrollment and increasing needs in this area, that it would be a good time to give a little bit of background about this. Later this year, I will be sharing some recommendations, gathered through a program study that is going on right now to determine exactly what our needs are and what our recommendations are, in light of all of that. So, why early childhood and preschool? Why do we have to have it? What is it all about? Child Find is something that it's not just about early childhood, but it's a huge part of early childhood. We are required by the state to identify children who are eligible for special education services beginning actually at age 3. And we need to do this through a variety of outreach efforts. And we'll talk a little bit more specifically about Child Find because that's a huge component of this. When we're looking at why do we have to have a preschool program? Why can't we just offer services? I know that's a question that comes up, can we just offer therapies? Because, that's what part of what the kids are getting that are coming to our preschool program. We are also required to provide a general education inclusive environment options for our preschoolers. And our preschoolers with special education needs specifically. And the emphasis on this from the state has increased quite a bit, I would say, in the last 10 years. So they monitor your least restrictive environments on an ongoing basis. We have indicators that they look at on an annual basis, and we get a report. We typically meet our LRE requirements. If you're not meeting them, you are required to attend a roundtable. You are required to come up with an action plan, and you're required to identify how you are going to provide those more inclusive options to your students. Because they know for all of our students, and particularly young learners, it's very important that they have peer models around them as well, and access to those general education environments. Early intervention. Early intervention is, a phrase that's used, very important when you're speaking of just, intervening early for kids with needs and really all kids. Early intervention is also a program that we're required to participate with. We are required to participate in the transition process for children who are approaching their 3rd birthday, reside in our district, and are receiving early intervention services, which could be speech therapy, developmental therapy, nutrition therapy. There's a whole slew of things that fall into that. Some of those services the school district provides, and sometimes they don't. We look at it from a little bit of a different lens than early intervention. Early intervention is looking at it from familial needs, and we are looking at it from educational need perspective. With a variety of tasks we have to accomplish in a specific timeline that is governed by laws and rules that we're bound to. Those include participating in a transition meeting, which pre-COVID, and we're finally getting back to, usually includes me going out on a home visit to meet with the families. Also screening or evaluating children and holding an eligibility meeting before they turn 3 and being prepared to offer services on their 3rd birthday unless their 3rd birthday falls over the summer. As of last year, they added a whole new slew of timelines and requirements for kids who have summer birthdays because there is a lapse in services otherwise. That was a good change, but it does make the end of our school year a little bit more intense because we're required to follow through on all of those requirements before the summer when we used to have the whole summer to be able to do that. The other piece of it is, and I know this is just an emphasis in general in education right now, but something really important to talk about is providing equity and making sure we're hitting those at-risk students too. So they don't necessarily have identified special education needs perhaps, but they may have things going on in their life or personally that have them fall into that at-risk category where they're kind of on the borderline. And if we provide early intervention, they're more likely to be successful and perhaps not require those things or to make better or more progress than they would have otherwise. And we added an at-risk component to our preschool just a couple of years ago. We did not have that previously. So kids that are kind of falling in that in-between area, and maybe preschool wouldn't be accessible to them because of financial reasons. Maybe their family has had a lot of trauma. Maybe they don't speak any English. There's a whole variety of things that can cause a child to fall into that category, but we want to be able to capture those children too and also provide them with that support that our tier 1 services in our preschool program provides. So that said, all of these efforts to reach children and to provide early intervention before they are in school and turning 5 are because early intervention programs have been shown to yield benefits in academic achievement, behavior, educational progression and attainment, delinquency and crime, and labor market success, among other domains. So we're talking about lifelong impact coming from preschool and early intervention. And truly early intervention starts before age 3. So the county has a responsibility to provide birth to 3, which is where early intervention comes in. So circling back to Child Find, what is it? Why do we have to do it? And basically the requirements of Child Find are why we have to have some sort of preschool program and services. It also is why we have special ed programming. We're not talking about our K through 8 programming tonight, but that is obviously impacted by, where our preschool population is at because they flow up to us. Preschool is obviously a great service and benefit to our community, but it's also what we need to offer in order to have a framework that provides for that special education instruction and related therapy services to eligible children in an inclusive environment. So I won't read you all of that, but it falls back, it's a component of IDEA. So it's a component of our special education law. And we do receive some funding. It's pretty minimal for preschool through a preschool specific grant. We also have our flow through grant for K through 8, but we have another smaller grant for preschool services that is just, it only supports children with special education needs, but it does help us provide some of those things that we need. So as far as Child Find efforts go, when I came to this district, we were not maximizing our Child Find efforts. So we had less tuition-based kids. We didn't have great community outreach. So we worked really, really hard on that as a team. And we do all of these things and probably some additional things I didn't capture up there. We have a booth annually at the preschool fair. We've done it over, we've provided videos the last couple of years when they weren't able to hold it in person. We moved to monthly preschool screenings. Those are published in a county calendar. They are also advertised on our website and things like that. And on average right now, we're seeing 5 kids every month, sometimes more. We have our early intervention transition evaluation process. We do kindergarten entrance screenings. We've gone to a different format for that, but still trying to capture those kiddos before they come into kindergarten as well, even if we're not seeing them for preschool. We sometimes have kiddos who come in who haven't been identified as having special education needs, and teachers are identifying those needs or other related service providers, or we have parents, child may be in preschool and they're reaching out to us and saying, I'm concerned about some things, can you help us out? So that all of those things fall into those efforts. We have timelines and laws around how we respond to each of those things that we are also responsible for. There are also several requirements for how your programming is actually structured, including capacities for programming, staffing patterns, and so on. When you start identifying students with more complicated, specialized, complex disabilities that have higher needs, you also need to shift your programming to meet those needs. And sometimes that means doing things differently to create a suitable learning environment for them. This can be more challenging, I feel, in a smaller district based on my experience for a variety of reasons, including the fact that we have less physical space to work with. And this is kind of unique to smaller districts, but we don't always have large cohorts of low incidence disabilities. So a group of children with similar disabilities who need really specialized programs, maybe we only have one child. So that child, we're either doing our best to meet their needs in the context of working with kids whose needs are a little bit different, or we're having to look outside of our district, which is not a direction we like to go, but we have to look at the best interest of the child too. And so if their needs are exceeding what we can provide and provide appropriately, then yes, we're gonna look at another district. We're gonna look at a more specialized program. I will tell you right now, you can't find them for preschoolers. They don't exist because everyone is experiencing an increase in needs and numbers likely due to COVID and how it's impacted early childhood development. And then obviously, as I was referencing before, the other thing you have to consider is when you do end up with a cohort of kids with pretty specialized needs, they are going to flow up through your district. So you've either got to create that programming for that group of children, or you're going to have to seek it out elsewhere. And financially, and I think ethically, if you have a group of kids that need that type of education in your district, you should be trying to figure out how you're going to serve them here. So when you're looking at numbers, you can see that our numbers of students with identified disabilities in early childhood were relatively stable over several years, falling in that 26, 27 range. We saw a little dip during COVID years, and our numbers in general dipped a little bit. People with preschool kids weren't really wanting to put them in programming. Some of our programming was remote, which, as you can imagine, for preschoolers presented a whole host of challenges. And our access to kids wasn't as great, so we weren't able to see kids in the same way to identify disabilities in kids or needs. Coming into this year, our numbers are looking a lot different. We are right at mid-year. We have already identified 25 students with needs. We have 10 with evaluations in progress, and we have another 6 months of screenings ahead of us. So the other piece of the story behind the numbers or beyond the numbers is what those numbers don't tell you. It's not just an increase in how many kids we're seeing, it's also an increase in the severity or significance of needs. It's an increase in the diversity of the kinds of needs we're seeing. And we're seeing children with more complex and multiple needs. And that is taxing our program in a different way. These changes are creating the need for different, increased programming, staffing, specialization of services, planning, instruction. I do want to commend our team who has done an outstanding job of working it's been a really challenging couple of years. This year is challenging in a different way. I think we all feel, blessed that we're able to be here and working directly with our children. We've also had to, go back to basics for some of the aspects that we've been faced with this year. As far as it's not just serving the kids in the classroom. There are a number of responsibilities that go on behind the scenes as well, with paperwork, with reaching out to parents, with supporting each other, collaborating. There is so much collaboration that goes on for this group because we have these kids here for 2.5 hours a day, and everything we're doing is team-based and intentionally trying to target those skills and maximize that time while these kiddos are here. So I want to say you have a really great group of therapists, each with their own area of expertise that are putting it all out there, as well as your teachers, as well as our paraprofessionals. And I could not be prouder of them. And I just want to make sure that's recognized as well. So we also know, looking ahead, interventions with better trained caregivers and smaller child to staff ratios appear to offer more favorable results. So when we're talking about kids with more specialized needs, it's not just the teachers and our therapists that need to be, have that adequate training and support. It's also our paraprofessionals who are working right in there with them as well. we're working really hard to do that within the context of the time we have at school. But as you all know, time is precious and it can be really challenging. So this is my last slide. So thank you for giving me your attention for this long. Where have we been? Well, when I started here 7 years ago, the majority of our students had mild to moderate needs. Our program was lacking in outreach and was lacking in child find efforts. Where are we now? With an increase in intentional child find efforts, including an increased number of screenings offered throughout the year, a spot in the Crystal Lake Preschool Fair, outreach to daycares, preschools, and other providers in the community. We have considerably increased our community communication, support, and outreach in general. People are much more aware of us. We are seen as a benefit and a desirable program. We have a lengthy waiting list every year for the last 4 years. We're literally having to cut off our registration for our tuition-based spots roughly 2 weeks after we open it. Because that waiting list generates so much. And this year we kept the waiting list going even after we closed registration. And people call, they're still calling, wanting to know can they get their child in for this year. As I noted, we're seeing a change in the types of needs that we are addressing. We have changed our own program logistics over the last couple of years to allow for more of that necessary screening and evaluation time and collaboration time. We have also added MTSS supports to our early childhood program. So we're working with children who don't have formalized IEPs or 504s, but do have a need that needs to be addressed, and our same team does all of that. We don't have a separate diagnostic team like a large district does. It's our folks in the classroom are doing our screenings, they're doing our evaluations, they're doing our MTSS work. We are now hitting the point where I am worried we are going to exceed our capacities this year. We're stretching our team to their limit to meet the needs that we're being presented with. And we are finding we are in need of more space, not just for classrooms, but to get them those appropriate spaces to meet motor and sensory needs for the diverse population we are now serving, who have a different kind of need, and their safety needs involved as well for kids who might elope or try to run away, or kids who don't have any awareness of their body and space and fall and not intentionally hurt another child. But when you're dealing with limited space and you're trying to get them the motor output that they need because it's getting cold and we can't go outside, it's challenging. And then as far as where we are going, ideally, I foresee the expansion of our early learning programming to have more specialized programming to be able to meet our kiddos with more significant needs and keep them in our district. We know that having them in their home school provides a whole host of advantages, and it's just really important as far as those children developing those community relationships with their peers. Even if they're different from their peers, they benefit from that. We know this, and it's what we try to do, and we're pretty successful with it for most of our students. We have just a small amount of kids that are placed in another public school system because we're too small to offer what they need. In order to deliver the type of programming we have offered to our community over the past few years and stay true to best practice, we are going to have to think about our staffing patterns, our resources, and what we're offering. With just on a side note, a little bit more specific, within classrooms that are designed for children with those lower incidence needs, and we're talking about kids who are nonverbal, who have motor difficulties, some have some medical complexities going on. So these are pretty significant disabilities we're talking about. It is preferable to have a ratio of 1 staff member to every 2 children. And that is something I've done research on within our region, which I'm not talking about region 4, I'm talking about our early childhood region, which is fairly large. And to cap those classes at a lower number, so 5 to 6 students versus that 10 cap that the state allows for. And we also need to consider what that means for our staffing patterns. I know I've shared a whole lot of information, but I do want to leave you with the thought that I think all of our children are making progress right now, even though we are being stretched. We have gotten creative, we've gotten innovative, we've had to look at our kids differently, look at our programming differently. We are doing all of that. We are using the resources within our reach and, not going beyond where we should be with our budget, and working really, really hard together to meet those children and families' needs. We want to keep being able to do that, and we want our staff to feel like they have the capacity to work at that best practice and, high effort level that they're accustomed to. They're a bunch of perfectionists. They want to do it and they want to do it right. So I, just think as a district, we really need to be looking at big picture. These kiddos that come into us, they're with us through 8th grade, and we know what a difference that early intervention makes for them. I appreciate you giving me the time and the floor to talk about that. I would offer you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have about anything I just shared.
Thank you for sharing.
First of all, commend you on your and the rest of the team's efforts. It sounds like, yes, you're identifying additional cases, but it sounds like it's an outcome of successful outreach, right? I guess when I look at this, I think of, is there additional training? Since you're identifying different types of needs, there's one-off, they're not, the kiddos are coming in all with the same needs and requirements. So is there additional training, which then leads me to think, I think we're very good as a district at leveraging and finding grants. Can we do better? Is there something different that we need to look at from a grants perspective that could bring in additional resources and
There
support?
are some smaller grants that I've identified. I haven't found a significant one, but I have 2 smaller grants that I am working on and have worked with some of our team members to identify some things that we need for some of our interest students that are quite expensive. So that's a good question and something that I can certainly dive deeper into.
Obviously, we want to be successful and provide to everybody in our community that we can, so that's very possible. But thank you for the information.
Anybody else have any questions? Rachel, are other districts in our area, do they have ECE programs? And if so, like kind of size-wise, what do they go for? I guess I'm just kind of
So every district, if they don't have an ECE program, they partner with another district to use their program. So like Baxter Grove works with Carrie.
Okay.
So Crystal Lake 47 has the Early Childhood Center, which is in another elementary school. Really large districts have an early learning school that houses usually preschool and kindergarten. Not always, it depends how big of a district. And it really just varies on how large their district is and how many kids they're serving and what kind of population they're serving. But, there's a really wide range. The district I came from, and they have expanded their efforts quite a bit. We had a very tiny program. We only had 2 self-contained programs, and we were on that list with the state and working with them and going to the round tables because we weren't offering any kind of at-risk or tuition-based offerings. So our kids were very limited as far as what they were able to access. That changed shortly after I left, but we were in the process of that. So it can be an entire school. It can be a classroom. It depends on the size of the district, but every district is required to provide early childhood.
okay. And I guess, do you know, like, the size of our district, or what it could kind of get to at some point, maybe, next year or 2? Yeah, are we in the same area as size-wise with regards to our EC program, or should we
should it be I get,
Well, we're going to struggle to meet all of our special education students' needs in the current construct of what we have, which right now we have 3 blended programs that are half-day classes and 1 self-contained. And then I think the most difficult aspect from an administrative perspective is projections, because you don't know. And we do have a list that's updated from the state. It's often wrong. So they're either missing kids, and it's not necessarily the state's fault, but there's a lot of variabilities when it's comes to identifying birth to 3. So we might, for instance, this happened a few times this year. A kiddo had just gotten identified as eligible for early intervention services, and it was 2 weeks before their 3rd birthday. And then we have 2 weeks to get all of that done and figure out what are we doing, you know? So I think that's the difficult aspect to it. And right now, we know we're at the height of this bubble that we've seen from COVID, and the hope is that it's going to come back down, but we don't know for sure. I can tell you that right now, it looks like our early intervention list is tailing off, but we still have several kids coming our way that are turning 3 in the next couple of months. So I do think we need some additional different kind of programming for lower incidence students based on what the children we're instructing right now and children that we see that are coming our way. That does provide for some of those more specialized instructional approaches, which are different than what you would see if you walked into one of our blended classrooms. At one time, our self-contained instructional approach looked very similar to our blended because our kids' needs weren't as significant. It looks very different now.
So far, go ahead.
Just one quick thing, when you say tuition based, does that mean kids that are attending the program but don't have any identified?
Correct, and they pay tuition.
So then doesn't that number just get smaller as more kids?
No, so this is also where it gets tricky. Our blended classrooms are required to be a 70-30 ratio. So you have a max of 30% special education students. There is a little loophole with that. Children who are identified as having only speech needs are not counted in that percentage by the state. But so you're maxing out, and even if you move relinquish some of those tuition-based spots, you can't put more special education needs into those spots. So it's very tricky, and you do your best. I had an average number of openings, like I typically do when we started the year, that we get close to capacity, but we have never exceeded capacity. We've also never had this many referrals in 1 year. We're not just seeing this at the preschool level, we're seeing this district-wide, and so is everyone else. These are the conversations that administrators from different groups are coming together and having on a regular basis right now. I don't think people recognize the developmental impact and some of that traumatic impact from the pandemic. I don't think people understood that for our children, the developmental impact is much more significant than I would have anticipated.
So we've known for about 6 weeks that we're hitting that capacity limit in the program. So we have had a job posting out looking for early childhood teacher with special education certification, because we strongly believe that we're going to have another student, 2, 3, as many as an unknown number that will present themselves. Turn 3, require services. And our choices are provide services for them here in a program where we're at capacity, or find services in another district, which causes transportation issues, tuition costs. So that's where we are. There's a strong possibility that we may be opening another part-time program in January, based on our current needs and what we potentially see in the pipeline as far as students that are currently being evaluated. And of course, we still have 6 more months of birthdays to come. We
doing on applicants for that role?
Yeah, not strong. Not a lot. Yeah.
Where would it go?
What's that?
Where would the program?
That's a great question. That's a
And
great
say
question.
still where
Figured you were getting
where are
there.
we putting,
Curious.
space wise?
We've identified some location options. Do we like any of them? Yeah. Are any of them going to be in an ECE classroom as currently constituted? No, because we only have the 2 rooms. So likely someone's going to get moved and not be happy. That would probably, if that does indeed happen, a person or 2 would be moved for the remainder of the school year. There we are. It's not great, but we also know that we need to meet the needs of the students, all the students, in the best way we can. Thank you, Mrs. Keesey.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you. Last month, we had a conversation about solar on our property. Kyle is here, Kyle Lloyd from Fuchsia Green. Greetings.
Hi, Dr. B. Real quickly, you can pay me later. No, Dr. B, if every superintendent was like this man, my job would be way easier. You guys have
That
an
can't be right.
awesome superintendent. Let me just echo this. I work from the top to the tippy toe bottom of this state, and he does his job really well. He represents you all very professionally and awesome. So I just get that out of the way really quick. I'm going to keep the pace tonight. I know you've had a full tax and early childhood education, all of this really important stuff. The good note to this is that I'll kind of talk who I represent, why I'm here, and we're talking surpluses now. So that's the good part. That's the part that we want to dig into, right? So really quickly, I stand here tonight. I'm Kyle. I represent the IEC powered by Future Green. So let me just give you a quick snapshot. We are a nonprofit advocacy group. Basically, the 3 major associations, so IASA, IASB, and IASBO, that kind of help you out, help Dr. B out, and help business officials out. They got in the room together. They knew solar and renewable energy was coming to our state in a very quick fashion. And if we learned one thing from the last couple years that we should have already known is that we are better together, right? Isolation is never good. Community is always the better option. And so with that in mind, they got together and created a couple different entities at a couple different time levels, kind of in sync with legislation changes in our state. And so I stand here today as that in-house advocate. Dr. B and I kind of have been working together just to answer some questions, get to the bottom of things, looking at your specific numbers. That's what gets me here today. And just to give you an idea, I think I've been to, I don't even know, 30, 40, 50 board meetings here in the last couple of months even. And so it's a hot topic. And so this is something I want to cover with you. So IEC powered by Future Green, let's do a quick history. So 1998-ish, Illinois deregulates as a state, meaning that gas and electric become available to purchase from different entities than your current utility provider. So ComEd, if you're a ComEd customer in this area and you're not a municipal aggregation or a rural co-op, you get to choose who you want to buy power from. At that point, the associations came together, created the Illinois Energy Consortium, IEC. They pull schools together. It's a consortium model to help drive costs down. Let's fast forward now to 2017. Renewable legislation gets passed in the House and Senate in our state. Associations come back together and say, let's do the same thing except for renewables, right? So how that works, IEC powered by Future Green, there is a board that controls what I do and how I do it. It's made up of counterparts of Dr. B's from across the state, a bunch of superintendents. They get together and they help broker power and gas together with our number. We serve about 220-ish school districts in our state. That's about 30% of the school districts across our state. And then we've now rolled in that opportunity with renewable energy development and navigating this whole frontier that is known as renewable energy development. So that's kind of why we're here. So Dr. B was kind enough to send me 12 months of power bills from your guys' district. So these are real numbers. This is estimates based off your current usage. So if you don't mind, go to the second page here. Okay, so you can roll on one more. I'm going to go quickly. So associations obviously having the fingerprint over everything that I do. There is a model in place that they wanted to see districts use for a litany of reasons. But before we get to the number, I ask this question. It's rhetorical in nature. I don't want to embarrass anybody, and I don't want you to embarrass me. Why do you want solar? Right? And I have asked this question across the state. I get everything from it's great for the environment, it saves us money, it makes us money, and I get the really great, transparent, honest people, and they go, "We have no stinking idea, but we know everybody's talking about it, right?" So some of those are right, some of those are wrong, some of those are in between. Let me give you a simple elementary school analogy. We can do that. We're at an elementary school. So when you get a power bill at the end of each month, this is going to be true for your house, your church, your YMCA, your school. There's two parts to the power bill: supply portion, and then there's a delivery and tax portion. Summarized parts, but that's the two main components, right? So deregulation in 98, we talked about it. That affects the supply portion of your bill. The other delivery and tax portions, you pay those to ComEd, or some of you might be Ameren customers. You pay them these fees. Deregulation only affects the supply portion. So regardless of who you broker with, who you go with, you affect that amount. Roundabout, now I'm giving summarization here, it's about a 40-60 split. 40% of your cost is supply, about 60% of your cost is going to be the delivery and tax that you pay each month. It can fluctuate. Higher rates right now is pretty volatile. It's probably closer to 50-50, but roundabout, okay? So think of it in these terms. You look outside, see power lines, power poles, transformers. That's the grid. You've heard that term, right? Think of it as a toll road. ComEd owns the toll road. You pay some entity for the power. Power gets put on the toll road, gets down the line, gets to your meter, takes the exit. At the end of the month, you pay for the juice itself, and then you pay ComEd for using their toll road, i.e. capacity demand, ancillary charges, yada, 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 right? So supply, delivery and tax, toll fees, the electricity you use, okay? So the idea here to get to the basis, and there's a couple different ways to get there, but the premise, the idea of why as consumers do we want solar? It is a paradigm shift. Technology has now gotten to the point where you and I can put panels on our roof. We can put panels in close proximity to our building, avoiding ComEd's toll road, which allows us to leverage a large spend of our electricity that we've never been able to touch before as consumers. So whether you buy it outright, whether you PPA it, whatever it is, the idea of it is here is that if we can find a spot, i.e. field of the school, put panels up, that power never touches the grid and goes directly from those panels to your meter. We then can leverage a larger portion of your utility bill that you and I could not touch before via brokerage, right? So that, in essence, is why you want solar. That's why consumers should be looking at this, thinking about this. It gives us competition, if you will, that we've never been able to give to the utility companies before. So not being derogatory, but competition in the marketplace is a good thing. So with that being said, there's a model that the associations want to see schools utilize. They believe probably 98% of schools in our state, should utilize what they call a power purchase agreement model. So PPA for short, you're going to hear me reference that term. Basically what that is that if a school district has rooftop space or ground space that tees up and works good for solar, in essence, IEC Powered by Future Green comes in, leases that space from the school. Our lease payment back to the school is a heavily discounted power rate. And what that allows for is a couple different things. Number one, schools are risk averse. We know this, we live by this. It's what keeps them afloat, right? So in that, the associations did not want to see school districts' cash flow models upset. They didn't want to see school districts going out and spending even in the high 7.5 figures worth of money for a capital improvement asset that's just specific to electricity. They believe schools' cash should be spent on school students and not on other entities, right? So that's number one. Second part is that they didn't want to see the cash flow model interrupted, where there's cash shortages and different things just because a capital improvement project that does have some inherent risk to it. So what a PPA does is a PPA hopefully gives a lot of the advantages while removing and allowing the associations to still be an umbrella of protection for the districts via a power purchase agreement. So that's a lot of information in a nutshell. I think the best way to look at it is let's look at some numbers together. I'm going to keep a pace and then I'll stop and I want to answer every single question at the end of it. But I also want to be quick because I want to be cognizant of your time and I know you have other things to do this evening. So first thing we get to is PPA terms. So if you look at line one here, you're going to see a 25-year number. Remember, PPA, the idea here is that all you will continue to do as a school once you utilize projects bill is that you're utilizing green energy, but you pay a monthly power bill, no cash flow interruption, no cash, anything like that leaves your coffers. 25 years. Why 25 years? Not your worry, but methodology to our madness. Of course, we own the panels. There are panels. We usually sync up our PPA terms with the manufacturer warranties of the panels. So a lot of panels from manufacturer nowadays have anywhere from 20 to 25-year warranties on them, just to give you some comfort and level of lifespans of these projects. Want to match the PPA terms with that, right? This estimated PPA price, this is going to be a really important number. I've got a spreadsheet a few slides down that's going to give you the meat. So I know I'm going quick. Don't worry about notes. Dr. B has this. He can share it as well if you don't already have it. Think of this PPA price. I want to call it a total bill rate. Okay. So Dr. B sends the information to us power bill wise. I looked at the supply and the delivery and tax portion of your current electricity bills. I add those components together to get what we call a gross total bill rate. So that's everything combined together, broken out in a per kilowatt hour amount. I'm going to show you that on a spreadsheet. And then the idea here, how to create value, is you take what you paid per kilowatt hour, that total bill rate, versus what that solar project would create in a total bill rate in that PPA price, right? So that's your two apples to apples comparison. I'll show you that in a spreadsheet to show you how I'm getting to savings. How are we getting to this number, right? Really quickly, this estimated escalator. This is where I find if you're glass half empty or glass half full type person, right? Let's start at glass half empty. That's usually where I tend to lean. Yes, that is an increase on that rate per year. No way around that. That means it goes up. I don't like that, Kyle. Neither do I. What this does, all right, so glass half empty. What this covers, what this is a 25-year agreement. And what that escalator fronts for is that in every year of this project for the next 25 years, this ensures that we can keep up maintenance, insurance, and hire trained and effective IBEW union trained labor to come out and work on this project, right? Who knows what minimum wage is going to be in 10 years? I don't think any of us in here do. That's what that escalator. So when we looking at glass half empty, it is an increase, but it does cover things. No, that's not profit. No, that's not us just shaving money off the top. That's us ensuring that we can pay the insurance and the maintenance on it throughout the agreement of the project to keep it efficient, to keep producing power, right? So let's look at glass half full approach here. Let's talk about inflation for just a moment, right? IEC powered by Future Green, what a year to be talking about inflation. We did a case study. So we went to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have tracked utility rates since about the early 1920s. So we went back approximately 45-ish years just to get a larger sample size, and we looked at power rates. And we looked, on average, if you would have taken 45 years ago to basically 2021, January-ish of each month, what would you have paid on that date compared to today? And our conservative findings for the state of Illinois specifically is that would equate to anywhere around a 6% increase per year on power rates, where if you would have paid your bill 40 years ago from today. So the idea here is that this inflation, let's talk about Consumer Pricing Index. Last month, I think it came out, and they were rating that it was only 8% increase in inflation this month in gas and groceries and other things, right? So glass half full approach here, in essence, guys, this escalator is hedging or locking in our inflation, right? We're taking a 2% lick at it. We're going, you know what? For the next 25 years, it can't increase any more than 2%. It's going to be 2%. The other beautiful thing is for Dr. B's share, this now gives him a factual formula to give the board a budget for price, for electricity price, right? You know how much you use, you know the PPA rate, and you know next year it's going to go up by 2%. So it finally gives you a formula-based approach to go, we need X amount of money in our utility budget for this coming year based on this formula because we have solar, right? So kind of gives that full scope. I know I'm going quick. Operation maintenance included in this. Insurance is included in this. Taxes is included in this. Management is included in this. It is a complete solution. I wouldn't be standing here today on behalf of the associations if I did not present a complete solution approach. They vetted us. They've combed through us with a fine-tooth comb. I told Dr. B this. The beauty in me being attached to the association, he has Dr. Clark's number. Dr. Clark has my personal address. I cannot hide, right? I cannot run I'm not here today, gone tomorrow, so that's the beauty in that level of protection that IEC Powered by Future Green kind of offers for this kind of length of term, if you will. Lease rate, $1 a year, that's semantics. We understand the value in this lease back to the school is the discounted power rate. Illinois requires us to put a dollar amount in there, so that's why you're seeing that $1 a year. And then also upgrades. I want to give some context here. This PPA rate, this total bill rate, if you will, on this project does not include assets to your current building, or excuse me, updates to your current asset building. Now, it does include updates throughout the life of the project on our end, but as your school stands today, let's say there's a breaker box, let's say there's a fuse, there's something that needs to be updated for that solar panel to connect to this building. I don't think this is going to be an option. The only time we run into those kind of issues is if we're working really rural school districts that are 1930s, 1940 buildings, where we have to come in and update components in order for the solar to connect, right? Not going to be a problem here, but we always like to say that on the front end, just to let that be known. Estimated system size, you're going to see around a 711 kW system. I would put you guys probably in that, probably the bottom rung of the top tier size-wise. So we're working with quite a few different districts. A lot of districts are chunked up, whereas yours is still kind of together. So that's what I think has driven that size a little higher there. But excited about that. And then, of course, production numbers, and then that beautiful first-year savings number of $36,000. We're going to talk about where we get that from. Dr. B, go to the next slide here. So obviously, we have worked together just in some initial conversations. Obviously, there's some ground space available. This was at the wishes of your superintendent, kind of where to tentatively lay these panels out, where we think they would work best in relation to the school. Now, remember, panels, we would have basically an underground wire that would be, sent underground to connect back to the school. So the idea here is you want it relatively close because that helps keep costs down. Further away you have it, the more ground and line loss that you're going to have in energy to get back to the building. Also more copper, conduit, things of that nature. So this was that happy medium to keep it in the agricultural space that's available here at the grounds, but also in close proximity to where the main power comes into the building at, to keep these numbers good. 90% offset. You're going to see that here. That's a really important number. So let me talk about some practical parts really quickly. Every system that we develop and we build is an interconnected system, i.e., you are still attached to the grid. You still call ComEd if you have a power outage. You still call your local utility company if a transformer blows. Why is that? You get the quickest response time. Safety and security is the #1 importance for all of you here for your district, right? Students, staff, and all of those alike. So the idea here is that with you still being interconnected, there is a magical number, i.e. 90% offtake, to where we leave 10% where you're still drawing from the grid for your overall 100 power use. Reason that is, right now as it stands, the utility companies are barely giving pennies on the dollar back for any excess energy created. One idea when I ask why solar, they tell me, Kyle, we're going to build it 3 times what we need and we're going to sell it, we're going to make money back. That is true. However, you're never going to come out on top because ComEd is giving pennies on the dollar back for this pricing, if they're even giving anything at all. There's nothing legislatively in place that mandates them net metering or buying that power back. What we're seeing in a lot of cases is they'll only net meter up into the amount that you would use, and then anything extra, they just take for free, right? So the idea here is that we don't want to overbuild. The school just pays for the development just to send ComEd free power. The idea here is that we find that happy medium in a 90-10 offtake, to where if you look at this chart below, you're going to see a production and consumption amount. So it's a game of averages, i.e. winter months, you're probably going to produce a little less. You're going to use a little more, i.e. summer months, you're going to produce more than what you've actually used. How that works is on the months you make more than you use, you get a bill credit, you buy that energy, it goes back towards a bill credit, and then your months, winter months that you don't make enough, those bill credits are reflected on those statements, and it gets you to that game of averages where it's going to come out to about a 90-10 split. 90% of it you're going to buy utilizing the power that's your solar panels created, and then the other 10% you're going to draw from the grid just as you are today. The other part to that is, let's say earthquake, tornado, hurricane, inland derecho, whatever happens, those panels are rendered useless. If your grid, Crystal Lake Grid, I believe that's probably who you're a part of here, Prairie Grove, some of it, if it is still operational, your school still has power, right? So it doesn't even matter what the panels are, if they're in disarray, your school still have power. Now let's flip the script over. Let's say a transformer blows 3 streets over and your panels are still working. Unfortunately, because you are interconnected, they're going to come kill your meter because they don't want your power backfeeding and killing the lineman 3 streets over. So you're not going to have power if your grid is down. That's probably the one disadvantage of being interconnected, but of course you want people to be safe. Utility companies, very used to working with these now. When we do our interconnection study, they're going to understand all the components, ins and outs, and they're going to know it's there before they go work in somewhere close in proximity to it. Let's go to the next phase. So this is the meat of the matter. This is probably what matters to this room more than anything as far as the financial responsibility you guys bear. A couple different numbers I want to point out because I think this tells the story of the PPA. So obviously, period, first column, pretty self-explanatory, 25-year agreement. Second column, you're going to see a 0.0987 number. That is a real-time total bill rate based off your last 12 months of power bills. So supply and delivery tax, combine them together, and you get that 0.0987 number. That's 12 months worth. That's a per kilowatt hour number. Okay. Second column, you're going to see that 0.0594 number. That's that total PPA rate, if you will. That's what, looking at space available, getting you to that 90%. What can I drive down that initial starting PPA cost to? That's that number. Fourth column over, you're going to see that production adjusted for consumption. So that is the amount of energy that we can produce on these panels. So i.e. that we take that number, right, that amount of electricity that these panels will offset. We take that times your total bill rate times the PPA rate. Those are the next two columns over, so the $91,000 and $54,000. And then we subtract those from each other to create the savings. So, i.e., you use this much power at your rate you're paying now. You use the same amount of power at the rate that the solar panels can create. You subtract those two, and of course, the difference in what you would have paid compared to what you did pay, that's where that savings number is coming from. Makes sense? Clear? Just want to make sure we understand that. So that's the value proposition here. And the idea of this savings, I think this is really neat and cool. This is a net money savings. This isn't a credit back from the state. This isn't money that you have to wait to be appropriated to you. And the other beautiful thing is this is totally discretionary to your board in that your power bill will be cheaper each month, i.e. more cash in the checking account at the end of the year, i.e. cash is a real-time spend that then can be transferred to wherever it needs to be, student, staff, anything of the like. So that's where that number's coming from. There's one more column on the end, and I want to point this out because we love to under-promise and kind of over-deliver in our approach. So we understand utility companies are not going to be happy about people pulling power off, right? And they basically are losing some of their source of revenue. So in that, because you're still interconnected, ComEd and utilities across the state, they still charge customers what they call a capacity or a demand charge. So i.e. what that means is that if your panels go down, they have to have enough power somewhere in reserve that if you flip on every light switch and turn on every AC unit in this building, they can get you that amount of power without causing major blackouts in the neighborhoods. So in that, every month, even though you still have solar, if you're interconnected, you're still going to get assessed on capacity demand based on a formula that the utility company uses. We're not dummies. We know they're going to find some other way to make up some of that money they lost. And so what we do here in this final column is that we adjust those capacity and demand charges 25% higher than what they are today. Now, 25% increase is extremely egregious. They'll actually have to have legislative action to be able to bump it that high. Realistically, I think they can do about a 10 to 12% increase and not cause legislative repercussions. So 25%, we shoot the mark high. I want you guys to look at that final column and think around a $27,000 first year savings, because then me and you can come back to the drawing board, and when it's more, we can smile as opposed to trying to me coming in with my hand and going, well, ComEd is trying to chip away at some things, right? Because is it going to happen? 100% it is. They're going to try to increase costs because they're losing revenue with you going to solar, right? So that's the real column. The one thing I want to point out here, because this is the risk adverse part of this, and I love this. Look at year one in your total bill rate column. So that second column over, that 0.0987 number, and then go to your solar PPA rate and go all the way down to year 25. That number is still less in year 25 than what you paid for the last 12 months of your payment. So that kind of tells the story as to why solar, why are we looking at this? What does this do? It's pretty staggering, honestly. And I think across the board, there's a lot of different stewardship principles that we're mingling in here. Dr. B, if you go to a couple different slides. Financially, it makes sense. Environmentally, I'm an outdoorsman. I live, breathe, love it. I think it's beautiful. It's amazing. Just the impact there, right? So kind of gives you some statistics on that. And then moving on, different projects we've done. These are across the state. So Argenta, Oriana, Stark County, of course, IASA building, a couple districts maybe in your neck of the woods, Dixon, Fenton, East Prairie, Prairie Hills is another big one. And then, of course, curriculum aspect. Dr. B and myself, we can talk more about this. Being out of the associations, we're working hand in hand with educators right now on introducing curriculum to mix in education with the projects that are setting on school grounds. So I think it's really neat that this is kind of catalyzed in our districts, because this is going to be part of everyday life for all of these students that are here now. New homes are getting built with solar. Community solar projects are popping up left and right. What a better place to learn it than right here at the school, where they can then take that with them and understand it and know how it works, know how to pay for it, know how it affects their finances, even at a younger age in elementary school. I think it's a powerful tool. Kind of pause there. I know it's a lot of information. One other thing I want to mention that's created a perfect storm in our state, specific to solar. Why now? As of this year, due to legislation in this state, we now use more electricity than what is created in the state of Illinois. Okay, so i.e. there's a deficit here. So I think all of us, I'm a resident of Illinois, so I can speak for this. All of us probably in the last 6 months have saw higher power bills than we've ever probably seen ever. And if you haven't yet, January's coming. I think next week they talk about another Arctic blast. Okay, so what's happening, guys, is that supply prices are higher than they've ever been. That's to blame on conflicts. Globally, you've got Ukraine war, you've got COVID shortages that are still real. The other side of that is because there's a deficit in our state, ComEd and Ameren now are buying power outside of our grid territory from other grids, and they are marking that up. And me and you as a consumer now are basically paying for that deficit price. And so that's kind of the perfect storm it's created. So now more than ever is where that leverage part is the best it's ever been, because our rates are as high as they've ever been. And they're sitting there going, all of the coal-fired power plants are closing down. How do we offset this? And that's why now is the best time to take a look at this and really view it, because it's a slippery slope now that our state is on as far as being in a deficit of energy. And so to think you could stabilize this for 25 years and kind of take yourself off that roulette wheel, pretty powerful, pretty neat, and yeah, it's pretty staggering, honestly, to look at those savings over 25 years. Questions? I'm going to stop there. I know you've heard a lot of information from a lot of different people. I think the one, yeah, I'll stop there. Dr. B, is there anything that I didn't cover that you and I talked about that you want to hit back on? I didn't know I would.
No, you hit everything we've already talked about.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
We've had multiple conversations over the years about doing something with the farmland, and solar was one of the big topics that came up. This is the ones that I've researched and presented. This is the one that I think has the best, most reliable, best option for the board to consider.
Let's talk about.
Please, a couple questions.
Please.
So you talk about external conflicts in the state of Illinois, people using more power than we're producing in state.
Yeah, it's safe.
Why then wouldn't that make any excess power that we produce off of a solar grid more attractive for them to buy in state?
Here's the thing: the utility companies do not want to incentivize solar any more than they have to, because the more they incentivize it, the more people then they leave. It messes up their revenue stream, right? Where they want to dictate who they buy power from and how they buy it. So if they come in and say, we're going to give everybody market rate for this solar, everybody then begins to develop in a different fashion, and it erodes every single revenue stream that they've based their company on the last 90 years, right? Because then every ratepayer now goes, we're dumb if we don't buy it, because we can then pay for itself, right? In essence. So let's talk about that just really quickly. Association specific. We have legislative lobbyists, Dr. Clark, Dr. Kobe, Dr. Bertrand in the trenches right now, specific to school districts, telling the legislative body, there's no reason why you shouldn't mandate utilities to have to buy power from school districts. I would love to walk in this room and say, let's fill the flipping field up, and then let's create another source of revenue for you guys to discretionarily use. Do I think that can happen? I do. Do I know what kind of timeline? I don't. The beauty of doing a PPA with the association specific is that as soon as that triggers, I can come back in and amend this PPA, and we can put as many panels up as we want and source that revenue via the association directly back to the district. That's just not a real conversation yet. I hope that answers that question.
No, it does.
Yeah.
A couple of other questions. So if we're producing,
Uh-huh.
the goal is to produce just the amount of energy that.
In essence,
right?
yes,
Since the excess is gonna go to waste.
that's correct.
So essentially the charges on the solar PPA rate.
Yeah.
Are delivery fees.
So that's everything
That's
combined,
essentially
supply, delivery, everything in essence. You are paying that per kilowatt hour. So that's your total bill rate. So it would make up your supply portion, delivery tax, everything together. That is your lump sum, total bill rate there for that amount. That's
Got it.
correct.
And I see that obviously, as you called out, that's going up across this 25 years.
Increases, that's correct.
Why is consumption assumed to go down?
Couple reasons. We believe that over time, technology is going to allow you to get more efficient, right? The idea that even if you look 10 years ago to today, you've actually become more efficient with electricity. I mean, that's a case study for every household. Energy efficiency, star rated appliances, LED. You've got monitors, sensors, things of that nature, right? So we look at it from that angle, and that we believe everybody probably initially is going to go down. The other aspect that we do that is that we don't want to inflate these numbers. If I put an increase on that, it would actually drive savings up because it's more power that you're buying at a lower rate than what you would have bought at the higher rate. So I don't want to come in here with a false assumption and tell you, oh, you're going to use 5% more each year. We don't know that, right? And so it makes more sense, and it's a more of an under-promising, over-delivering mentality to go, you're going to use less power. Reality says you are, because you're going to get more efficient, as opposed to me coming in here and saying you're going to use more, and then that just pads those savings numbers at the other end. Because remember, the trade-off is you use X amount versus your old rate with what you're paying with your new rate, right? So I don't want that to be confusing, and you go, well, why does it show we were going to save $50,000, but we only save 30, and then we have to come back and go, well, you use less power, right? I would rather you show you that on the front end, and then if you use more power, you just save more money, right? That's the in essence, if you will.
And then maybe I missed this. Walk me through again. What's
Please.
driving that PPA rate up across the 25 years?
So that is cost on our end. So within this PPA rate, the whole idea as to why you would trust a PPA over owning, right, is that for 25 years, I've got to pay insurance, I've got to pay tax, I've got to be able to send out trained electricians to keep this thing optimal, I've got to rebuild inverters, here 10-ish, right? All of that is comprised in this PPA rate. So that 2% allows any kind of influx or increase there for me to be able to keep it optimal on my end, right? That's the beautiful thing in this ecosystem. I've agreed to sell you power at X, so I've got to do everything in my power to ensure that it creates enough power, but in order to do that, I need to efficiently be able to maintenance it and take care of it, right? And so that's what that increase is allowing me to adjust. Once again, it's inflation, right? It's still there, it's still real. We know prices are going to go up. We're just paying for it up front. You're telling me 2%, let's lock it in, as opposed to you and I being 10 years down the road and insurance tripling. That's on me. I got to figure that out now with the 2% increase. That's not your work.
Okay, so there's not an additional lease
None.
that goes along with this. This
None.
is essentially the lease is built in.
That's everything. That's correct. So
Rate.
it's X rate at 2%, and that is a complete solution approach. There's no fees, there's no cash, there's no transaction outside of we produce power, you buy it at X power rate, that takes care of the project on your behalf. You function as if it's not really there, right?
Now, I don't want to think this of our community.
Please.
God forbid somebody goes in there and they break a whole bunch of panels.
Yeah, that's
Right?
on us.
Is that on us? Is that on you?
Insurance, right? Insurance is a beautiful thing. That's on us. It's fenced in. That's in that PPA rate, right? Liability aspect, that's on us. literally the associations wanted to try to remove every ounce of risk they could to allow your jobs to be easier. We're the solar people. That's what we do. The other beautiful thing to that point is why 2% ensures us being able to cover costs, economies of scale. I've got 150 projects that I'm leveraging insurance and tax and different things on. And so that 2%, why we can keep it so low is that I spread that out over my 150 projects that we're going to do over the next 2 quarters. And that's what allows me to come in at 2% and go, yeah, that covers us. We're good. That keeps me safe because of all the risk that's spread amongst the projects through the consortium. If that makes sense. Let's talk one other thing, and I'm going to be pessimistic, but going to be play devil's advocate. Okay, what happens if IEC Power by Future Green goes away? What happens to your project? The beautiful thing to a PPA in these terms is that there's always an inherent value to this piece of paper because you as a school district are an A+ credit rated entity. You can't bankrupt. Worst thing you do is consolidate, right? So the idea here is that that PPA always has inherent value. So there's always going to be someone to service that piece of paper, right? That's the beautiful thing of a PPA. So let's say that worst case scenario, nobody wants the stinking thing. You're interconnected. Panels shut off. Creditors at some point are going to want that equipment. In worst case, right? Your power just reverts back to ComEd. You never lose power. Power never gets shut off. You function just as you are today without buying solar, right? That's kind of why interconnection still matters as well, because you're still attached to the utility entity, which removes that risk of we've got a school building that doesn't have power to it, right? If that makes sense.
I have a question.
Please.
So we don't have to pay for the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make money?
It's a great question, right? So once again, economies of scale. So what happens is there is a margin in here, let's be honest, right? IEC Powered by Future Green has to make money in order to stay afloat. What we do is we put a margin in these deals. There is some upfront credits that the state pays that we get a developer fee for from the IEC. And what that is it's kept at a low rate because we anticipate X amount of number of projects being built, right? So the whole idea here is that the association steps in and goes, we don't want people profiteering or, if you will, take advantage of these credits. We want to see the majority of these credits pass through to the school. That's how I'm able to get this PPA rate as low as it is. And then I want to tell you, it's around the 2 to 3% mark off each project that then we lump sum totals because we're literally, I can't tell you how many are in the coffer to be developed. Let's say we do half of them. That's where that profit's being shared amongst the consortium in that there's, let's say, 100 projects being developed over the next year, right? So the thing that the associations didn't want is robbing Peter to pay Paul. They wanted it from, let's look at it as a holistic standpoint and go, if you can make 1%, 2% off each, then everybody splitting the bill helps the IEC by Future Green stay afloat, cover administrative costs, cover salaries, but yet districts are getting those credits and seeing low PPA rates, right? That's the premise of the consortium model. Same way on brokerage, right? We broker school for 200 districts. What we can do is put a penny in each deal, and then that penny totals a pretty large amount because it's spread over 200 districts, right? Kind of the idea of the consortium. Hope that answers that. Yeah. I will say too, obviously there's legislated in place. There's a lot of fly-by-night developers. That's the thing that I've kind of helped come in and go back and forth with a lot of districts. I'm in a lot of talks right now. I don't think they're bad companies. It's not being derogatory in that manner, but it's just a lot of time management that schools have to now balance when you step off into the realm of energy development. And that's what I'm kind of in the room to also help with is kind of fend all that off and go, you know where I'm at, you can make one phone call, as opposed to other states and companies coming from other entities, other places that you just can't track down once you get and they get what they want. Just to be honest.
So Kyle, other than, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Violet, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So you guys maintain the panels.
Yes.
Who maintains that underground connection?
So that is all part of our asset basically that we install. So every ounce of equipment or infrastructure that would be installed with this project is under our management. And so to that point, we already have in place what we call a project labor agreement. We put Illinois citizens to work on these projects. So IBW trained. The reason that is to erase or reduce as many technical issues as we could possibly have, right? We don't want to use cheap labor and then have to come back and fix a ton of stuff because that hurts the ability. Not your worry at that point. We already told you we're going to sell you power X, so we have to ensure that that happens. So the idea is that we have trained staff and labor that comes out to install that. Obviously, the other part to that is an interconnection study. Everything runs past the utility, so before we can plug anything in, ComEd's people are out here, they inspect all that we do in order to stamp it before it can be plugged back into the grid and the switch turned on. So it's kind of like two entities that help keep stuff straight. And then, of course, any piece of asset that was installed when we were here up to where it connects, that's our worry, our cost, our factor there to ensure maintenance and make sure it works, right?
Okay, that answers my question.
Yeah.
To the condo, from the walls in, the building walls in, we own it.
Yeah, whatever is your asset today is your asset, and anything that we would add on is ours, right? So wire run all the way up to the point of your meter. Still your meter on the building, still ComEd's meter on the building. From that meter in is yours, from that meter out is ours, right? If that makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
I think this question was answered already, but I just want to be certain that
Please.
I'm clear.
Uh-huh.
In terms of power failover,
Yep.
we're not actually storing power from the panels, so that if we were to lose power, we can draw from that.
No, ma'am, and that comes back to interconnection.
Right. And
Just a safety concern from ComEd's standpoint, right? Because if they have a bunch of loose power on this end and that meter's still active, it's a bi-directional meter. That power comes in and goes out, comes in and goes out, right? And so any kind of power that would be on this side that could come out would obviously be a hazard for anybody working down the line.
Right. Okay. And then some of these school districts that were mentioned.
Yeah.
What is the timeline in terms of, were these panels installed at these sites 5 years ago, last year?
Yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing
For
stories of longevity.
For sure, yeah, resiliency, right?
Yeah.
And I think to that point, a lot of these are newer just because of the incentives that have been available, i.e. the earliest being 2017. So there was no incentives to help drive the cost down for districts to take advantage. If I would have come in 4 years ago, you guys would still, even with the PPA, you'd be looking at a $500,000 to $750,000 price tag, right? So there's not a lot of case studies pre that because a lot of districts didn't have $1 million to go spend on panels, right? So up until that point, the other aspect there is that as far as resiliency goes, I mean, solar has been around now since really the mid 70s. There's a lot of case studies out there on different entities that have used it that I think are profitable. I'll be happy to share some of those. Also, if you're just doing an initial research, just even Google search resiliency of panels. There's a lot of great information out there right now. I think specific to school districts, I'll be happy to once again share that information for some of the neighboring districts that are working through our process with this. Timeline wise, I mean, there's some variables as far as size of projects. I think timeline for this kind of project, if we keep a pace to it, I mean, it'll be from start to finish 8 to 10 months where piles are driven, panels are hung. That PPA rate does not start until the switch is flipped and power is running from those projects. The two variables that I can't control, interconnection from ComEd. So if ComEd drags their feet or goes a little slower, that can change timetables. You and I can't affect that. The other aspect is procurement. But the beauty of our size is that I've already spot bought in the tens of thousands of panels because of all the other projects that are triggering. So I don't think we're going to have any kind of issue component-wise to get stuff out here if you wish to proceed forward. That's the other beauty of economies of scale because we have such a large variety of schools we're servicing. I hope I answered that question. Please, did I leave anything out there?
You did, and you said roughly 200 schools in the state?
So 200 schools is what, in some way, shape, or form, IEC Powered by Future Grid services currently. That's either brokerage or development. There's probably another 250 that are on the fringe that are reaching out in order for us to create development proposals and kind of walk through that process of what does solar look like for their district.
Sure, but installed.
Yeah, installed, it's going to be probably roughly 10 to 15 right now active. Because you're looking at a sample size of, incentives have been here since 2020. So
so it's 10 to 15 in the state.
Yes,
currently.
that's correct. Now our EPCs, I can connect you. Our EPC company that was vetted, that's a part of us. They developed, I want to say it's in roughly around 20 to 30 megs of solar, meaning that they have industrial sized projects across our state right now. That's who the associations brought into the room with us in order to say, okay, you say you could build these, but can you really build them, right? That's that EPC company that I can share with Dr. B, and we can connect that, and you can see some of your larger scale projects that are interesting, right? The thing to think about with schools is that incentives didn't exist. So there was no, I mean, this is a paradigm shift. We are literally on the cusp of a new frontier. In fact, we have about 12 more months, and incentives from the state are going to disappear, and you'll probably not see a school develop solar post that 12 months, if ever again, because Illinois basically looked across the line, the Senate president looked across at Dr. Clark and said, this is the best shot I'm giving you for upfront incentives. You'll never get this again legislatively in our state. So that's the thing to keep in mind when you think about who's done it, who's not done it, is we're in a new frontier. This didn't exist 3-4 years ago for schools to get this kind of PPA rate that we're looking at a surplus, not money out of your pocket, right? So that's the other challenge of going, okay, that's not very many. Well, we're new, right? This is that jump or set moment, right? That's the tough part to that point.
So there wouldn't be any neighboring schools, just to see even how compliant or cooperative
100%.
ComEd was with their
100%.
grid.
Yeah,
Just
so
to talk school to school.
right.
how would it go?
No. I can connect you with districts with panels up and going. As far as in close proximity to here, I mean Dixon, it's not installed yet at Dixon. They're in their final stages of engineering. Richland 88A, Joe and I are in about 40% of engineering. I could go down a little further. So Stark County and Argenta, that would be one that you could talk to them and see the interaction from the utilities. I mean, the beautiful thing about this is logistics. You get a power bill each month still. There's no other change on day-to-day stuff. You don't interact with the utilities anymore or any less. Everything changes over internally in their systems. It's still their meter. You basically get 2 power bills. You get a power bill from the power you bought from the solar, and then you get a power bill for those demand and capacity charges from ComEd, right? And that's logistically bookkeeping wise. You pay us for that, the solar, and you pay the other power bill back to ComEd that month. And so logistics wise, there's not any more or any less interaction than what you're having now with the utility company. Just to give you logistics of it. But
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there an action item? There's no action item on this tonight, right?
Not yet. Correct.
I have more questions than I think we can get through tonight. I'm trying to think if there's another way, maybe I can communicate with you differently, or maybe we can talk separately.
You're welcome to ask your questions of me or Kyle now if you so choose, or you can
I'm just
write
more
them down and
interested,
send them out. We can send out a
Yeah.
blast to all the world with the responses.
I'm just more interested more in the technical aspect of it.
Okay.
I mean, we're not just throwing them out in the field and plugging them in. There's so much more complicated.
So
Even with the building, with the soil out there, with the underground feeds, this building is several different. I don't think we have a primary feed in this building. I don't know.
so what happens is
this is like 6 buildings all.
yeah,
attached at
right.
once.
But what happens with that, like even on our end for IE, we've already reached out to ComEd. I mean, we do this for every district that we're talking to. They give us that schematic of the utility layout of like publicly funded entities, so that's public access knowledge there. And the other part to that is that, I mean, I have a team of engineers in place that here's the process, right? So in essence, I schedule a site visit where my head of engineering comes out and walks this ground with maintenance staff, Dr. B, whoever wants to be there. We lay out that schematic in that visit, right?
That must be multiple feeds around this building. I don't know. I've never seen a site utility plan. So, okay. So then you're gonna run high voltage feeds underground from that field into 2 different taps?
So in essence, it's going to come out of those inverters, and when you say high voltage, there's a variable that we'll have to get into depending on the inverters and pans that we use, right? There's a ton of variables in that, right? So the idea is yes, we're going to run conduit. We have ground penetrating radar that will come out and run, get all permitting, everything of the sort, via county, municipal, whatever that looks like. We handle that on our end, and then they come out and we'll trench that back into the meter. Of course, once again, ComEd has to come out and we have to approve that interconnection study. Not recreating the mantle here, right? ComEd stamps it every step of the way. We run that underground conduit to your meter, which is a bidirectional meter currently, meaning that power can flow both ways. And then once that's connected in, it's literally one connection point from your school via that conduit that goes back to that main inverter from the system. It's actually pretty simplistic. I'm not trying
You
to.
have a couple 100 feet of underground
Right.
utility,
Right.
which is not cheap at all.
That's it's factored in the PPA cost. You're looking
And
at
that, I mean, even, do you even know what, you're in a whole, not whole, farm field out there. I mean, what if you have to go 50 foot deep to put foundations in?
well, and I think that's as we progress forward, right? Once we do studies, safety net of being with the association. If I come back to Dr. B and go, Dr. B, this ain't gonna work, you lose nothing, right? I'm not building just to build. I'm building at the optimal place that we found here. If I come back at any point in this study and go, listen, this isn't gonna work, I'm gonna come back to you with those findings and tell you why or why it wouldn't, right? This is our initial rendering. In order to get to that point, we've got to get a lease option signed, which a lease option, I've shared this with Dr. B. Basically what this is a commitment of good faith. Doesn't commit you financially to this build, there's no financial commitment, zero whatsoever. It's a 180-day window that just says your district is just talking to IEC powered by Future Green. Within that 180-day window, that's when we schedule the site visit. My head of engineer comes out, walks the place, begins survey studying. In that 180-day window, I basically prove what this proposal said can happen via all those studies. I come back at that point with the PPA agreement and the lease agreement. Those are the two concrete documents that you'll look at. Once those are inked, you then commit to the bill. Before that, in that 180-day window, if we come back and say it doesn't work, whoop, now we know. Or if you guys at any point along the way go, you know what, we don't want to do this, you owe us nothing, we owe you nothing, the 180 days expires, and we go on our merry way, right? During that 180-day window is where technically we can keep you in step every step of the way to go, here's the answer to this question. How deep are the pilings going to have to go? Where's the conduit running? Have you looked at ground penetrating radar to ensure there's no issues, right? All of that happens in that 180-day window to get to that point of, here's a real PPA, ink it, these are the numbers, that's what they're going to be.
I don't really care about the answers. I'm just pointing out that the variables
Yeah, 100%.
are so broad.
Exactly. And
I don't see how you could possibly have that model into being anything profitable.
the way we can, to that question, is you on your own school district, you probably can. Us and our sample size that we've done, like I said, we have proposals out. I don't know, it's probably in the 300 to 400 range that we've looked at and schematically based this. So that leverage point on that economies to scale, we know we can get within this window regardless and make it work. And if for some reason it doesn't, I come back to you and say, it doesn't work. Here's why or why not, right? That's the algorithm. That's the beauty of the economies of scale across the line, right?
And if you're not storing the power, how do you get power if it's dark out?
In essence, that's why you're still interconnected, right? So any kind
You're
of
always
juice.
gonna pull from the grid.
That's correct. That's that interconnection process, right? And interconnection there, this is why we still know ComEd is still going to charge capacity and demand, because you're still going to use juice from the building, right? In fact, it's going to change the time frame that they assess capacity and demand, that you're going to do it at night. But the beautiful thing to that is you always inherently use less power at night than you would have during the day, right?
But your projection here was 90%. We're getting 90% of our power from solar.
That's correct. Because then on those days that you use more than what you produce more than what you use, you're getting bill credit for that total amount back to offset then those times where you don't produce, right?
You're never pumping it back into the grid.
Very, very seldom. Let's say it overproduces and there is a little bit that's pumped back. What'll happen is ComEd will net meter up to the amount that you've used. But because of that 90-10 percentile, it's going to be very minute. We want it to be that way because it does you no good to build 3 times as big once again and get pennies on the dollar. It'll never offset that.
And again, maybe it's a technical thing. But I don't know what the electrical rooms look like in the school, but
And that's what we'll help find out. I think
they're not
that's
on the outside of the
I think that's the other part, Steve, to this that
Okay. I mean, because you have to get underground.
Correct. You have to get to the.
yeah, and I think to that point, the beautiful tool that I am to Dr. B is that I'm gonna come in and do this for him, and I'm gonna, if nothing else, I'm gonna give you guys a viewpoint and an assessment of here's what we found, right? And once again, that's kind of the other added value here in that. Here's our findings.
So you can talk about where the giant green transformers are, like right out past here. That's where part of the power comes in for the elementary building. That was in front of the junior high, by the office, is hidden by the pine tree. That was the 2 main spots, and that's where the electrical rooms are for the, as the main feeds for both buildings.
But you don't go to ComEd's transformers, you go into the electrical rooms.
So what we'll do is we'll look at both ends. So obviously the main source of power has to tap in where ComEd's main power comes into this building. That's got to be close. And that's where that bidirectional meter is going to be in some close relation to that, right? Because ComEd's using that meter to trace to building, right?
What does that mean? ComEd power goes into a transformer and then it's piped out of the
So
transformer.
main line
Into an electrical room.
hits the transformer,
Is
transformer
that where
then to a meter, meter then into your building. Because that meter is it's the toll booth. Every ounce of power has to touch that meter, otherwise they don't know how to
So
build
you
it.
tap into the meter.
So it would be on that line, an interconnection, a side tap to ComEd's line. That's why they have to approve it going into that meter, right? So then ComEd's meter tracks. We have two different catches. We have a tracking system on our panels. So every ounce of power that goes from that panel get to the point of where ComEd's tracking system starts, and that gives us a two-way spot to keep everybody honest. Because we don't want ComEd coming back and being like, you guys aren't producing that. That's what that safety net at the panels do. And then also then we can verify ComEd's numbers back to you guys. But yes, it connects in somewhere right before the meter, then it feeds into the meter, and that's how it gets into your building. That's how they're billing you now, right? That's how they place it. So.
I don't know, I just don't, 90%, you really only get power on a sunny day. I don't know if that's 90% of when the school uses its power.
See, that's all based in factual numbers, right? We know what you use now, factually, off your 12 months. We know what those panels can create based on manufacturer specs, based on 30 plus years of history of usage of that equipment, of technology, right? So algorithm-wise, I'm going, we use it. Whatever class of panels we can get with that inverter, we know that this many is going to create X amount based against the number that he gave us real time last 12 months, right? That's the variable being taken out of it, right? I.e., I mean, it's like knowing a truck's going to get this many miles per gallon. They know that, so you know you can go this far to, kind of
Is that number right, that 0.09? I thought we like pre-purchased or had an agreement, and I thought it was like 0.03.
That's on your supply only.
Okay, correct. So
Right.
it's the number that we're netting it against.
So that's your, remember, supply portion over here, that's your 0.03 that you're brokering, and then there's a delivery and tax aspect of your bill, regardless of who you broker with, you still pay that portion. So
I get it.
your total bill rate, your gross,
But the PPA that you're comparing it against
is a gross number.
It's an apples to apples.
That's an apples to apples. Yes, sir, that is correct. Yes,
So
please.
with that 90%,
Uh-huh.
where is the number that says in this area that on the average there's X percent of sunlight? Like, I mean, I haven't seen the sun in a couple days.
Right. No. That's a great point. So what we have is we have a system that basically tracks how many hours per sunlight per day. So it's a computer software system. It's proprietary software. We pay for it, right? And that's that other factor that we utilize here in our software design is that it tracks literally off of up to a millimeter within a geographic longitude latitude point and gives us that standard data.
And that's included in the calculation.
That's correct. That's what allows us to calculate how much sunlight. That's an algorithm within our proprietary software that we utilize, right? And so that's based off your usage, what the panels can create, what's the efficiency of these panels in this area, right? That's an industry standard.
So when you say
software.
panels can create, it includes them.
That's correct.
Percent of it or hours.
Geographically related to those.
So it's not
to those.
just like, the capacity
No,
of the panel. Maybe
that's-
it's based off of,
No,
you
ma'am.
can create based off the
Yes, ma'am.
sunlight available.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And that's kind of that industry standard approach. There's like two major software systems that have been around for about 15 years, and Helioscope is one of them. And Helioscope is that software that we utilize in house in order to kind of back that up, if you would.
So, yeah,
Yes.
so.
And I'm sorry I'm taking so much time,
No,
but
no, it's
I
been-
want you to
it's
ask
been-
them while I'm here, just
No,
because.
It's been a conversation for many years, and it would be like, oh yeah, oh no, oh yeah, oh
Understand.
no, and to hear, with legislation, and we don't want to pay $1 for it.
Right.
We want it, but we don't want to pay
Right.
anything.
And you shouldn't.
So we shouldn't, we won't. So it's very informative because we're in the right time to do
Yep.
it. But I have the 12-month window.
So let me explain that to you. So IEC Powered by Future Green went to the trenches. We've been there since 2017. So there was the FEJA Act, Future Energy Jobs Act. That is the first act that appropriated what is called REC credits. A REC credit is a renewable energy credit. A renewable energy credit you and I actually fund. There is a line item in every Illinois taxpayer or ratepayer bill, like when you pay a utility bill. build, there's a line item that when you pay goes into a separate account at the state level. The state then reappropriates that money in the form of renewable energy credits. What happened in the first bill in 2017 is there was X amount created. Everybody had basically applications lined up. The bill released, everybody submitted their application. There was maybe 2% of that whole money that schools got because schools couldn't act quick enough to get it. Private sector entities that don't have to have board meetings can go in and sign a paper and go, we want to build this. They used all the credits. So from that point on, associations went in the room to the state legislative and said, listen, we want to carve out specific for school districts that nobody else can touch because we want to see schools use this. So in that bill last fall that was signed, 15%, because of Future Green, IEC, Dr. Clark associations went in and said we need 15% of the whole pool to ensure that schools get ample money and ample time to attempt to do this. They agreed to give us 15% of that whole pool. I don't know what the number is. It's astronomically high. It's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that is sitting there currently. We know the state legislative body has told us you have 18 to 24 months roundaboutish before we're going to let private sector entity come over here and start using these, depending on the access and availability and how much schools are using this 15%, right? So when I tell you there's another 12 months of that left, that's what I mean, that there is another 12 months of that protection from the legislative body. And we know if we don't activate all of it or use a majority of it, the legislative body is going to cave because lobbyists, that's what they do. And they're going to say, here, Walmart, here, major corporation, you can come in and use these rep credits to offset your power and help your margins, right? So I hope that helps. I hope that gives maybe some clarity there. The beautiful thing that bill did is created the pool. And then also the other beautiful thing is that I have a separate lane as IEC powered by Future Green to approach the legislative body in the application process to get these for all these projects, right? I don't have to go through a lot of the loopholes that other entities do because it is a state-funded entity and they want to ensure that money is back to the schools. That was the heart of the bill. Sorry.
No, thank you.
The way I read the documents that you
Yes.
sent me, Kyle's correct. If you give me the authority to sign the document that I have, it's a 6-month window essentially. They're going to come in and do all these studies.
Yep.
And at the end of that, during that process and at the end, you'll know if these numbers are going to be
Yep,
as accurate as
that's correct.
possible. And that's what it would need to be board authorization
That's correct.
to enter into an agreement. I can't do that. You'd have to do that. But if you give me the authority to at least engage with IEC Future Green to do the study for the next 6 months, it costs you nothing.
Yeah. And it's a good faith just to say, listen, we'll listen to you. We're giving you 6 months. Come in and do it. And then at the end of 6 months, we'll make a determining decision. Right?
Is this where we're agreeing to lease you the land for $1?
No.
No?
So this is a lease option. This is an option in essence. It's 180 days that says we're not discussing this with any other entity or developing company. You are a sole development company we're talking to. Come in, do your studies. During that 180 days, what I'm going to do for you is I am going to produce a PPA and lease agreement that shores up these numbers. I'm going to come back to you and go, what the proposal showed is right, and here's the numbers, and here's the entity and documents you need to sign to do it. Or I'm going to come back to you and say, you know what, we had to change the proposal. Here's the new numbers that we found. Or you know what, it ain't going to work, right? At that point, whatever my findings are, I give you the PPA and lease agreement. Those are the two documents. Then you can decide, have legal look at it. That's the, go now or never go moment, right? Where we sign it, we build, or you look at me and go, you know what, Kyle, we don't want to do it. Thank you for your time.
Can we get access to the parcel of land inside of this window for them to do the studies necessary?
It's our land.
Well, I know, but it's still, is that the parcel that's still being leased back?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So just making sure that there wasn't anything in our lease back preventing us from going over there and doing the study.
There is, but it depends on, I'm not sure. We haven't talked about how in depth the study
Minimally,
will be and what we're going to have to
You're going to have one guy on site
Yeah.
that walks it. He's going to have a drone. That drone allows us to shoot longitude, latitude, just like any kind of survey study will. We just do it via drone. It's a little less invasive at that point. The other aspect there is that any kind of structural renderings or electrical grid renderings for this building itself, we want to take a look at anything you have. Other than that, there's gonna be the one thing we did discuss, but it's simply walking it, is easement or access route, what we wanna take. That's just looking at the drone footage and deciding where to lay that. So as far as invasive, you haven't agreed to anything, so there is no breaking ground, there's
I thought we
no,
were doing drilling.
not the
Test
study.
to see how long.
Not in the study, that's walking it, and then that'll just be done via drone, and then also any kind of ground penetrating, just, handheld scan, right? There's no penetration that happens in those studies, right? I mean, that's like survey work in essence is what's happening.
So my conversations with the hackers have been very good. They understand that we have irons in the fire, so to speak, and potential uses for the property. We dug holes in the field last year when we did the ground testing for the new addition. We went out into the field. We had 6 or 8 spots where we dug. They knew about it in advance. As long as I tell them what we're going to do, they're okay with it. They understand and acknowledge that it's our property, and that if we give them notice, the lease terminates. Okay.
And then the only other question I had,
Please.
does this agreement lock us into anything relative to year 26? And is there anything preventing you from tripling
No,
your fees in year
yes.
26?
Right, so this PPA terminates in year 25. So in the last day of year 25, it automatically terminates, meaning that, once again, this is a complete solution. We come in, clean all equipment, and restore asset to how we found it. So pilings come up, pillars come up, all of that stuff comes out that we installed, and then restore asset. Now, there are options that, let's say in year 25, everything's optimally working and the school wants to continue. There is an opt-in option, but it's not an auto-renew clause. Once again, that's that association approach of, they don't want to see schools going, okay, what the heck do we do with it now? Or, taking advantage of, i.e., like you said, we're going to double our terms now. In year 26, it triples and you have to pay us. Not the case at all. Year 25, it terminates. We come in and glean equipment. It's not a lease to own. It's not a lease, anything like that. It's our equipment. We're going to get rid of it. Recycle it. That was the other point that I actually was talking about earlier. That was the other entity, is that it's not just going to landfill. We wanted to use partners that did agree upon terms to meet the messaging of all the components that can be recycled off that project in year 25 are going to be recycled, either put back into use or recycled in the proper chains, just to keep the heart of what we're doing at the forefront, right? Please.
Kyle, when it comes to maintenance
Yeah.
of like the equipment and stuff,
Yep.
how quickly, like if something goes down or broken or something, how fast?
It's a great question. So how we spread that out and how we do that is throughout every step of this project, we actually involve local contractors where we can. We also utilize IBW electricians. So every union hall across our state, mixed in with their preferred contractors, locality-wise, already have a chain of communication with us as far as when we come out to develop it. We're going to set those plans in place to allow quick response time. The other point to that is we have basically a monitoring system that we can remotely monitor from our viewpoint, to where if we see anything nefarious, anything going on, we immediately proactively call on our end and have somebody out. Now, obviously, it's within relation. It's not going to be invasive to school or anything like that, right? But that's kind of how we manage that. Of course, if it's on the utility side of things, once again, transformer, that meter transformer wise, that's all ComEd. You'll call just like you would now. But as far as those panels, inverter to that part of the line, that's where our internal remote monitoring system is going to allow us. Billing wise, that's the other beautiful thing. Your lovely bookkeeper can call me, can call our team, and I will help walk through and systematically break down billing or anything like that. You still have one number you can call. It's my face that came in originally. And so it keeps it kind of systematic, and you don't feel like you're out on a limb somewhere and don't know what the world's going on, right? If that makes sense.
Can you speak to any safety concerns?
Yeah.
Considering this is
No, great question.
potentially going to be on a property.
Great question. Fencing, right? Chain link. It's going to be anywhere from 10 to 12 foot chain link fence. The beautiful thing about solar, and this is why people have it in their backyards or on the roof of their house, there's no inherent danger to a solar panel or the components. It's just like that transformer box that's got the green metal casing around it. The only kind of danger would be if you open it up and start raining metal things on the components, where you could probably get yourself in trouble. But as far as, like, let's say Lord forbid, a student runs over there, climbs the fence, and grabs hold or climbs on top of it. I mean, there's no electrical electrocution issues. In fact, there are districts, not in this state, but districts we've helped with in other states, where their FFA actually keeps animals. They keep sheep in the pens with the panels to mow the grass. And their FFA then will sell the sheep at the end of the year. They can't do goats because goats will climb on it and stuff the panels. But sheep-wise, they literally have used that green space underneath as a science ags mix. So not trying to throw out any too crazy ideas, but maybe you guys can start processing wool and do all that, right? Co-op stuff. But just to answer that question, the intrinsic danger in it, that's why a lot of people use it residentially, is because they're outside of any other electrical component. There's not much. And then the resiliency of the panels are pretty amazing. They can withstand up to a certain amount of hail damage. If you look on YouTube, you can see like cars driving over panels now. I mean, it's pretty amazing, the technology aspect of the resiliency of them and safety of them. Yeah. So no noise. That's the other question. They don't necessarily make a noise or anything like
I
that.
think if we could just kind of take a head nod or something to kind of acknowledge giving Dr. Butte the authority to continue with this until we have to vote when the study is done. Anybody object to that idea, or are we all okay with Dr. Butte doing this?
Yes?
Yeah, I want to hear it. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
David, you're quiet.
No, I'm okay with it. I just want to call out that it does have in here about the land lease option, the land lease in there for $1, which I thought was not included in this. But if this is what you're signing, just making sure we're.
He talked about the dollar.
The dollar.
The dollar, because the state requires you to charge something or something.
Yes, that's
For
correct.
the study.
30,000.
For the study.
No. So yeah, so the study, all it's saying is in that lease option, it's referencing the lease agreement that you'll see with that PPA that states on that lease agreement is the dollar amount, the $1, right? The lease option has to be tied back to something, right? And so that's where it's referencing the dollar that you'll see on the actual lease agreement, right? So formal power purchase agreement documents, lease agreement documents, that's what I'll come and lay on your desk and go, do you want to build or not? Lease option is simply referring to, let me do these studies this next 180 days, and if I can get to the plausible place, then I produce you the lease agreement that says $1 a year, and the PPA amount that would say whatever PPA rate, i.e. the one that I show you on the proposal. Does that clarify? Sorry.
Yep, thank you.
Having the lease option also helps me when I continually get phone calls and emails
Right.
from other solar companies, and I just simply say, I have lease option, thank you very much, have a great day. You don't have to take their call for 15 minutes or an hour.
Okay, so you have your direction.
Thank
then.
you,
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the time spent.
That
I hope
was
that
very
helped.
informative.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So going on, I guess we're on to old business, or is there anything else in your report, Dr.?
Oh, there's a lot we could talk about, but if you want to move on to business, we can do that too. It may not-
No, whatever you need to talk about in your report.
So from my report, something I do want to have a conversation with is something that. Need to take a break? No. As you know, we are now out to bid on summer renovation of 23. Okay, so that's the repairing the toilet spaces in the elementary building, the health, life, safety items that are all over in the 57 wing, all the way down to the 84 corridor. Had a conversation with Dane and Stuart from White Company and Terry from ICI. We've had ongoing conversations about, okay, once we do that, what's the board's desire to move on to the next phase? I know we had previous conversations about, some larger additions, but right now, we are not planning on putting anything out on referendum and asking taxpayers for more money. What I do want to see, and I did ask, I talked to PNA about Tammy, PNA put together, if the board was interested in doing another $10 million alternate revenue bonds, what would that look like? And what would we use that money for? That money would be used for early childhood classrooms, which we've kind of talked about tonight. Building some more of those frees up those spaces that we have in the building now for additional kindergarten and or first grade classrooms that we also know we're about to need as well. Just wanted to, the documents there, obviously the rates are higher than they were in 21 when we did the first round of all bonds. We're not committed to it, but I kind of wanted to gauge and get your thoughts on it. Is that something you want to continue to do? Do you want to wait 12 more months?
Can I answer that? Because the last discussion I recall of it was that we were gonna, the timing came down to how long it would take to relocate the septic field. Because that was the driving factor behind what would happen with
That's
this.
what we did this summer. We're going to decommission the field that's right here.
Yeah.
Okay, and draw a new line from the toilet spaces in the building to the new field. There's a lot of capacity in the current field that is not used currently. The septic contractor that we've used, which is Mellon, that investigated that, says we have plenty of space for all our spaces now, and in addition, in the current field.
So they're gonna relocate it and restore that this summer.
Correct.
So next school year, there'll be nothing underground obstructing the possibility of this wing.
That is correct.
Stretching across.
That is correct. Also, would nothing be in the way then of potential power solar line coming in through there as well, because that field would be gone. Decommission
That was one
we're
of my
saying-
other questions that I held off.
It's okay.
So 23 would be these renovations that we're talking about.
Renovations, correct.
And you're asking us about for 24 doing more building.
Do you want to build on another wing?
And those are the two drawings that you showed us with the,
Correct. We have one option that goes off of what's called the fourth grade wing, just right behind me. The other option is going off of the 84, 89 edition, the first grade, second grade wing. Going out that way, either an L shape or going straight out in toward the field. I will
when do
say,
we have to decide by? If we want it
you
for.
have plenty of time to decide by it. I'm just giving you information, something to think about now. Here's the bond issue, here's what it could look like currently. Moving forward, obviously, if you're going to, we've got to go through all the drawing process. We haven't even started, just basic drawings now. We haven't done anything as far as what would that look like.
Well, the purpose of that extension was one, to free up classrooms
Classrooms over here,
in
right?
the north wing
Correct.
when we renovate them.
Correct.
That'd be the
And then-
third year.
And then after the renovation, and now you're left with additional
Additional class.
classrooms in theory.
Right, so it's like a 3-year plan.
Correct. So some of the renovations we are going to do this summer, not the full extensive, gut renovation that we talked about previously. We are going to do the asbestos abatement in there. We have to fix the hallways, the fire ratings of the kindergarten classrooms.
What
And that's
what
for money that we-
category are those?
Correct.
That's the money we still have.
Money we
correct?
currently have from the bonds we sold
For the
last
bond
year.
we sold last year,
Correct.
so That's
Is
what's going
Does
on.
that knock out the life safety list?
Yes, it does.
That's why
Well, what
we're doing.
about the brick that's on there?
That's on the list.
So you're gonna talk about the
Yeah.
building this summer?
That's on the list.
And so all that money is what we're utilizing now.
Correct. Remainder of the first round of alternate bonds, that's what we're targeting as our budget for the renovations for the summer.
So then there really isn't any more renovation then after this summer in that north wing.
We're not renovating any classrooms. We're just doing the necessity things that we have to fix. Many of them you won't even see because they're up above the ceiling tiles. But yes, we are doing some.
So what I just said is if I'm incorrect, then it wouldn't be an overflow for the north wing renovation, because that work will already be done. Unless you chose to renovate the classrooms.
Correct. Unless we chose to renovate classrooms, move walls, resize classroom spaces, that's what we need the overflow space for, which right now, we say we're not gonna do that work in the north. We're just gonna do the bare minimum, what we had to do.
The health place.
Bare minimum sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Do the health, life, safety
Yeah.
work, make it safe.
Yeah.
Put a new toilet space in there and make it livable for what we have now, and then decide what you want to do in the future. My question is when do you want to see that future happen? We're having needs in our early childhood, in our kindergarten, in our first grade. How soon do you see or feel the need to have that push forward?
I mean, I think it'd be foolish of us not to explore what the options are now. Because clearly, once again, we're battling against space needs. Right?
In addition, space needs. Our modular units here, the storage unit, just to my right, and the transportation trailer, we had their inspections. Didn't go well. And I did tell the architects up front that I intend to put $0 into those structures, $0. But if you want to maintain, continue to use them, you're going to have to allocate assets, fix and repair. I'm opposed to that. I would rather us, if we need storage space, and we do, I'd rather us, do something else for storage rather than continue to put money in these trailers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
In not great shape.
So if we want it for back to school 2024, for example, if
If
we,
you want what back to school?
another addition, one of those two options that we're
Correct.
showing to it, for 2024, right?
For the August of 24,
Yes.
you need to start working on that now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we built the 5th grade wing in about 7 months.
Right.
So in order, if you go at the same process and you backtrack that from August, 7 to 8 months prior to that, you need to have your plans in place, your finances ready to go.
So but that would be, so 8 months of building would be January of 2024, and then 8 months before that would be April of 2023.
Which is 4 months away.
Which is probably the
Yeah.
same. That's
So we
what
were
Dave
just
and I
doing
were
the
just
math on
But
discussing.
to get your bonds, to get your money, it's a 3-month process.
So can
So we need to
talk
make this-
about it, like now
We
we
need to-
talked about it a little bit, we've had a lot of
Next
discussion.
month.
I know, you have a lot of things tonight to talk about.
No,
Wait,
but we
one
need to
second.
get, he's saying the phone.
1 second,
Yeah.
can we make it an agenda item for January to refresh and see the 2 drawings, kind of see some like a timeline, and then be able to like, hopefully January is not as hefty as today was, and that we can, no, I'm just saying.
Nothing against you, Mrs. Beasley.
So maybe in January, we can like kind of just see, okay, in order to hit a back to school 2024, kind of do that, what are the things, what, all that again. in January.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think we literally had to have something close to almost every year coming through the pipeline with regards to construction. If we were gonna,
We do,
yeah,
we do. And it was always a question about how to fund it.
I know.
Okay, and so that's where we are. And if you're going to fund the next round, you just have this conversation.
Today.
Because it's a 3-month process.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to start with.
So yeah, I would say put it on January. and see.
I can reach out to White Company and have them.
And we can go through the financial things and all that presentation that you have here, right? Is there-
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll change because what PMA gave, that's for now.
Yeah.
Bond market changes day to day. So there'll be an updated one.
Sure.
Every time we talk about it, it'll be updated.
That's okay, guys?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect, thank you.
We got it.
Is there anything else on picture? Okay, so we're going to move on to old business. Here we go. May I have a motion to approve resolution 2022-19 adopting and directing the filing of the certificate of tax levy for 2022?
So moved.
One,
Second.
Stephanie, discussion? This is what we talked about in the hearing in the beginning at 6:45 to 7. No questions? Roll call vote, please.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gwen Bielek,
Yes.
David Costa,
Yes.
Stephanie Hausch,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw.
Yes.
Motion carried.
New business. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes regular minutes from November 15, 2022, bills payable and treasurer's report?
So
So moved.
Second.
Gwen and Dave, discussion. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gwen Bielek,
Yes.
David Costa,
Yes.
Stephanie Hausch,
yes.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw.
Yes.
Motion carried.
May I have a motion to approve the first reading of board policy press 110, additions, deletions, and changes?
So moved.
Second.
Dave and Gwen. Discussion? These are all the policies that come from the press.
Correct.
Why is it so bad?
Yeah. There's always,
It's usually a lot when they put it out 4 times a year.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have a motion to approve resolution 2022-20 abating the taxes heretofore levied for the year 2022 to pay debt services on the general obligation school bonds, alternate revenue source, series 2021.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Can you talk a little bit about it, Dr. Bader, or just the background?
So for a number of years now, we have abated any bond and interest payments that the district has. We did promise the public a year ago, we issued the alternate revenue bonds, we would pledge the EDF money for that and not tax dollars. And so this is your continuing pledge to honor that pledge from a year ago. You'll pass the resolution, we'll file it with the clerk's office, and that way they don't issue taxes for that revenue. We'll take it out of that revenue that comes from EDF, which is in the ed fund. Thank you. But there'll be a transfer later in the year to make the principal and interest payment.
Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
David Costa,
Yes.
Stephanie Hausch,
Yes.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gordon Violet,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw,
Yes.
motion carried.
May I have a motion to approve first reading of additions and or modifications to job descriptions?
So moved.
Second. Stephanie and Josie, discussion?
So following the new support staff contract, many of the items that were in the job descriptions were referenced in the prior contract. We had to make adjustments to those. All the ones you see here have been rewritten and embedded by PGESP for first reading. There are still a few more to go. They're in the process. So you get another round of them next month for first reading, and you get these back for the final reading.
Questions, anybody? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. May I have a motion to approve a special meeting on February 2nd, 2023 at 3223 Illinois Route 176, Crystal Lake, Illinois at 6 p.m. to consider awarding construction and renovation contracts.
Second.
Discussion?
Hold on, what is, that's the third,
I believe that's
or second?
the second is on Thursday. So part of the process is we couldn't get the bids back in time in order to hit the January board meeting. And the thought was if we wait too many days after the bid opening, it might get too late into February, even though it's the second Tuesday of the month. So ICI recommended that we have a special board meeting just to have the conversation about the bids. That was the night that they were available and that I was available. I know it's not on a Tuesday. That is the night that we have.
So February 2nd. Mark your calendars, everybody.
Every day is a Groundhog Day.
It says that.
We'll repeat the day over and over and over.
Okay, don't forget. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
With some reminders.
Please. Okay. We're going to go into executive session and we'll have no actions after it. So may I have a motion to go into executive session at 9:14 p.m. for the consideration of matters related to the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberation concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employee.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Do you want to wait? Wait and hang out. This is supposed to be.
Have a brownie.
Have a brownie as you're leaving. You might.